Okay, now for the idea of SETI. SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. If you take all the weirdo stuff, you take all the crop circles, abductions, all the UFOs, all that, set that aside, apply Occam's razor to that stuff. You remember the limits on technology, okay? This stuff, okay? Because these things show us that there are technological limits that we have run into. And so we cannot assume that technology simply increases. So we cannot assume that aliens have some sort of super duper technology. What can we rationally do from a scientific perspective? SETI has been the thing that people have worked on, which is listening for signals from alien civilizations. Now, one student gave this great comment. She said that Earth is like a nonstop party. And if we had alien neighbors, they would really, really know where we are. And that is dead on. We are constantly broadcasting signals out into space. Sometimes people think that this means like we're trying to communicate with the space aliens. No, we're not. When you talk on your phone, you're broadcasting signals that go out into space. Most of this, but just an insignificant fraction of the signal from your phone goes to the cell phone tower and is transmitted on to your friends. The vast majority of the signal from that phone just travels out in all directions because this phone doesn't know where the tower is and it doesn't send like a directed beam. It just travels out in all directions, goes out into space. So whatever you have said on your phone, pretty much for your whole life, is traveling out into space. Now, phones are pretty weak. WHAS radio is much, much more powerful than your phone, much easier to hear from a distance. But radio signals, a couple people asked, do radio signals ever go away? And the answer is no. They get weaker and weaker and weaker. As the word that's used in math, if you've had the math course, is they asymptotically go to zero. Asymptotes, if you had that in the math class, they get less and less, but they never fully go away. So in theory, something you said on your phone 4 years ago is out there passing Alpha Centauri, the closest star, is about 4 light years away. Radio is essentially a form of electromagnetic waves, same as light, and so it's traveling at the speed of light. So if something you said 4 light years away is in theory able to be picked up something you said 4 years ago is able to be picked up by somebody, if there is anybody, on Alpha Centauri. Okay, so that's the idea of SETI, is we're sending out all this kind of racket. So space aliens, if they had radios, they could pick us up. Well, it ought to work in the other direction, right? Maybe space aliens are making a bunch of noise. Maybe their world is like a nonstop party also. They're broadcasting all kinds of stuff out, and we can pick their stuff up. And that doesn't require we don't need any super technology. We don't need any weirdo stuff. This is a believable, rational, plausible method for detecting space aliens. Okay, then you think this could really work. Okay, now it hasn't worked. Okay, and so somebody said, "Who funds SETI?" And someone asked that question, and for a while there was some, this was done by sort of respectable organizations. There was a period where NASA was going to fund some of this. But that became like as we'll learn, but they're going to learn there's some arguments against doing this from a guy named Michael Hart. This next chapter, but that sort of fell out of fashion. We shouldn't be using taxpayer money for this junk. So it became something that's funded by private money. But even now, the private money is less likely to be found than it used to be because, people have been doing SETI since the 60s and nobody's detected anything. So it's kind of looking like, how long are you going to keep doing something and have it not work? There are still some enthusiasts. There's a Russian billionaire named Yuri Milner who's, promised to fund like $100 billion to SETI work. So, it's called the Breakthrough Initiative or the Breakthrough Collaborative. There's rich people who are willing to spend money on this stuff, because, well, if you detected life from other worlds, some people think that would make like a huge difference. I think that's history tells us that maybe that's not the case, because we already had the Mars stuff, and we saw back over 100 years ago that it was in the newspaper that we've discovered life on Mars, and so this was big news, and that didn't change. That didn't make everyone come together in world peace. Right after that, we had the First World War. So I don't really know that discovering life on another world would really change all that much. But there's people who want to pony up the money to do that. Not a lot. It's becoming harder for SETI to get funding. There's a number of big SETI projects that have sort of fallen under. One student in the class said that he's experimented with SETI at home and said that currently it's non-functional. Well, I'm not surprised. I experimented with SETI at home over 20 years ago. I had Jefferson as being one of the top participators in that program. It was supposed to run for 3 years, and they were expecting to find something. They didn't, and I've lost interest in it, okay? Because, well, you keep digging around, and you don't find anything. All right, so let me pause it and switch to the next questions. Okay, then I would say the next common question that people ask is the idea of, someone said that who is to say that aliens are biological creatures? Why can't they be mechanical creatures like in Transformers? And then somebody said, why do aliens have to be like us, like what we expect? And the answer to that question is they don't. Okay, but here's the problem. If you don't keep to the idea of life as we know it, then what do you allow? Okay, what is not beyond the pale of possibility? What about ghosts? Okay. In other words, what about leprechauns? Someone said, couldn't leprechauns be real? And the answer is yes, of course leprechauns could be real. They could have magic powers and live in a trans-dimensional world. Why, there's a leprechaun right there. Can't you see it? Right there. Right? See the leprechaun? Yeah, right there it is. Okay. You can't see it? Well, here, look. I got a little leprechaun detector. Boop, 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 boop. See, that's proof. Proof that there's a leprechaun there. Okay. It gets us back into the weirdo stuff. Is it possible that there are leprechauns? Yes. Okay. When I was on a trip, we had to go to spend some time doing laundry. We were at a laundromat. There was a book. It was in Germany. There were things to read at the laundromat. There was a book on the shelf. It's one of the only things in English. It was a book called Artemis Fowl. Some of you may have read this, okay? And it's all about how there's a whole world of leprechauns and other magical creatures that have been driven underground by the expansion of human beings, and they're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. I only read about 40 pages of it before the clothes were done. But the whole premise of that book is that there's hidden magical creatures. So when you get to the idea that you're talking about things we won't recognize that are beyond scientific understanding, then everything is wide open, and you don't need to go look up into space. You don't need to look to other worlds to find intelligent life. You just get out your leprechaun detectors and go, and start hunting for the pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, or start eating Lucky Charms and waiting for a leprechaun to appear. You can't rule that stuff out. Okay, back to the elves and the Coke machines. You can't rule these things out, but they're not scientific. Okay, they violate Occam's razor. And so if we're going to search coherently and rationally for life for extraterrestrial intelligence, we have to limit it to things that are understandable by science, which means stuff like us. Okay, machines are not intelligent. We have no reason to believe that there's nothing in nature that shows that you would have an intelligent machine. Okay, so that's not on the list. Okay, that's a science fiction idea. There's lots and lots of science fiction ideas. They're fun to watch in movies, but they got absolutely no scientific basis in reality. While I'm on that subject, somebody said, well, what about things like hyperdrive and stuff like that? can that stuff be real? And the answer is no, okay? From a scientific perspective, as far as we can tell, you cannot get anything to go faster than the speed of light. So there is no hyperdrive. Now you say, well, how do we know there can't be any hyperdrive? Well, we don't, okay? But in Harry Potter, people can apparate from one place to another and they can ride on brooms. Why? Because they have magic. So if we discover magic, can we apparate and ride on brooms? We could take a broom to the nearest planet or just apparate to the nearest planet. Yeah, that would be possible if we discover magic, but that's not scientific, okay? Because there's no scientific evidence for magic. So we have to keep this to a scientific, plausible perspective, not a Hollywood perspective. And that is really difficult because Hollywood has such an influence on how we view these sorts of things. It's so popular. You look at Marvel, the whole Marvel universe. It's all full of space aliens and wild technologies and things like that. So and that's such a huge movie franchise. So we see this stuff all the time. But it's not real, right? It's just like Harry Potter. Harry Potter, those movies were really huge when they came out. It ain't real, okay? And you say, well, there might be. Well, yes, there might be. Okay, there might be a leprechaun sitting here right next to me too, okay? I hope everybody can understand the equivalence between this idea of a leprechaun right here and other sorts of things that we don't know exist or can't come up with explanations for. We have to keep our discussions from a scientific perspective to what is scientifically plausible. And you can talk about the leprechauns all you want. It's not science. Okay, now I just have a variety of questions that a number of people asked. Those are the main ones that groups of people, like multiple people asked. Couple things. Someone asked, what travels at the speed of light besides light? And the answer is nothing. Okay, light travels at the speed of light and other wavelengths of light. Remember that light comes in various wavelengths from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But you go above violet, you get ultraviolet, then X-rays, then gamma rays. You go below red, you get infrared, and then microwaves, and then radio. So radio is essentially the same. It's a type of light. Okay, it's all electromagnetic radiation. So, but nothing travels at that speed except for light. So someone else asked along the same line, well, can we improve the speed of wireless communication? And the answer is no, okay, because wireless communication all uses electromagnetic radiation. Your cell phones use microwaves. WHAS uses radio waves. Your remote control for things typically uses infrared. They're all electromagnetic radiation. All that wireless communication uses electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation, by its nature, travels at the speed of light. So you can't change it. You can't make it go faster. And there's no other known. You have to have a whole new discovery in physics of some sort of thing that travels faster than the speed of light. And that goes against Einstein's theories. So you'd have to have a major revision of our scientific ideas. Of course, we've learned in this class you can have major revisions of our scientific ideas. But right now, we don't have any idea what that could be. Okay, so that gets back. So then you're back to the magic and the brooms, right? Because you could have a major revision that allowed apparating and flying on brooms. Okay, so we have to keep it to within what's scientifically possible. Because of this issue of not being able to travel at the speed of light, we cannot send probes out to planets outside our solar system. So we've sent probes and robots and rovers and stuff to Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto with the New Horizons. That's the most recent one. We've also sent probes to a number of the different moons of these different planets. But we cannot send things outside the solar system because we can't get stuff traveling fast enough. We have probes like the Voyager probe sent out in the 70s. They're outside the solar system. They're actually heading into interstellar space. But at the rate they travel, that'll be 100,000 years before they would ever even reach another star. So our probes, our up close look is only of stuff that's within our own solar system.